just to introduce myself, I'm Ken Reed. I'm the current president of Heartland Renewable Energy Society. And so we have Stephen Melton with us, who I'm not going to even get into the introductions. Shauna will be the moderator, and so it'll be self-explanatory. So let's just jump right into this.
Oh, tell them what you're going to do, though. Tell them we're going to look at the video, and then afterwards we're going to have questions and answers.
Thank you.
Going back live.
I forgot the housekeeping part. You're right. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Here we go.
Okay, welcome. We're glad you are joining us this evening for this Zoom session. We're going to introduce you to a very interesting guy that's going to tell you a little bit about his history, and he's going to tell you about his house and why we're here and why I was interested to share this information things that he did to his house. I'm interested to share with you. So hopefully you could think about doing it to your own home. So yes, welcome to Heartland Renewable Energy Society, a Zoom session. And I want to introduce you to Stephen Melton. I met Stephen about a year ago. I actually met him a little bit before that he had a table outside our library in Parkville here. We're in Parkville. And I met him then, and he called me several months later and consulted with me about some things that he could do with his house. So I'll let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his background and how he came to this.
Well, hello, and thank you for inviting me to speak to the Heartland Renewable Energy Society. It's quite an honor, and thank you for everybody who's listening. I'm Steve Melton. I live in Parkville, Missouri. I've lived here for not quite 6 years, and I'm an alderman here in Ward 3, so you're sitting in my district here, so this is great. I am a former military officer, so I served an entire career, nearly 40 years in the U.S. Army. I was a tank officer. You've heard about those in Ukraine, and ended up here at Fort Leavenworth in the Kansas City area. And I taught at the Command and General Staff College as a civilian for 12 years. And one of the things I did teaching in the military at the military school was talk to the students about future war, and I would talk to them about climate change and how it would be a cause of warfare later on in the century, and the importance of getting a handle on it. When I retired from teaching at the Command and General Staff College, my wife and I moved across the river over into Parkville, because Parkville, face it, is a nicer place than Leavenworth, and it's more centrally located if you want to do things in the metropolitan area.
Sure.
So Parkville is great. We had a house built. So the house that we're in right now is less than 6 years old, and it was built according to building codes, insulation codes, that really haven't changed much since about 2007, even before. I don't think the house was any better insulated than the house that we lived in Leavenworth, which was built in the 1990s.
Right.
So, it's sort of like insulation plateaued, household technology plateaued, but of course global warming continued, and we're getting to the point where we just can't burn fossil fuels like we used to. We can't continue on with this paradigm of we'll build a shell and have it poorly insulated and just burn a lot of fossil fuel to warm the house.
To keep it warm, yeah.
It's just a paradigm that is no longer sustainable given the realities of global warming.
And it was built in 2017, right? Is that what?
This house,
this house.
2017 is when we occupied it. It was built, like I said, according to code. I asked the builder, I said, well, can we build it, with more insulation? He looked at me and says, I build them to code. No, I don't do that kind of work. Which might lead to an interesting discussion later on. So I remained active in the climate movement. When you're in the Army or working for the Army, you don't do political stuff. But after I left the employment of the Army, I joined Citizens Climate Lobby, here the Kansas City chapter, and shortly thereafter became the chapter leader for the chapter. And a great volunteer gig, cost me money to be the chapter leader because of buying handouts and all kinds of things. And what you see behind us, this Vote Climate campaign, is sort of Vote Climate for the Children is our brand, if you speak. Because if you don't vote climate, if you don't vote for candidates who are going to do the work to stop climate change, it won't happen. So ultimately, you know, as we saw with the tree ordinance that was just passed in Kansas City, or with, you know, the new 2021 international energy conservation codes that were passed in Kansas City last year, if you don't have people on your city councils, if you don't have people in your state houses and in the national government who are willing to vote for climate action to stop climate change, it won't happen. If you vote these people in, then we have a chance.
We have a chance.
Okay, we have a chance.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm kind of the glass is half full. We have a chance, but we could certainly improve our opportunity, you know, if we had the right people voted into office. So a little bit about the House. As I said, it's 6 years old. It's in Parkville, Missouri. It's a reverse 1.5 split, is I think what they call these. It's huge for my wife and I. It's 2,300 square feet on the main floor, and then the heated spaces downstairs are about another 12 or 1,300 square feet. So it's a big house. And then, of course, downstairs is also storage and mechanical areas, and we'll see those later on the film,
Sure.
I guess.
Yep, yes, we will.
And so, you know, that gives you a size of the house. It was built with R48 insulation up in the attic, just blown fiberglass. And this story that we're on now, the main story, has 2x4 studs and fiberglass insulation between the studs, which is code. Downstairs, it's 6-inch studs with fiberglass insulation. So, you know, that's how it was built. It was built with like a builder's grade air conditioning system and gas furnace. It also had a gas heater for water heater. And it was built, when we had it built, we had an electric cooktop put in. So we have an induction stove. But, you know, after being in Citizens Climate Lobby and, you know, pressing for electrification of households, I finally said, well, I need to electrify my household. And I got somebody out to look at solar panels just briefly, but the way the roof is built, it won't accommodate solar panels. So I went to Arcadia Power and contracted with them for my power. So I still get my power from KCP&L, Evergy now,
yeah.
Evergy, but I pay for 100% wind energy. So I pay a surplus, a 10% surtax or more, so that all my electrical use is offset by them buying additional wind energy.
Now, how about how much per month does that add to your bill?
It's over 10%,
So
which is like $20. It depends on the month.
It depends on the month.
But
True.
The biggest month would be about $20. I'm fortunate that I don't have to worry about those kinds of sums of money. But I said, well, you know, I'm going to go all electric. You know, I'm just, you know, and I'm going to see if I can turn this house into an all electric house. Because while we're fighting for building codes so that we can electrify new houses. The reality is that 95%, 99% of the houses were built with inadequate insulation to have gas furnaces, in this area. And retrofitting those houses is key to solving the emissions problem that emanates from houses. So I said, I'm going to take my house, my wife's house, and I'm going to experiment to see what we can do. And so I got all the house insulated insofar as I could, and mainly that's in the attic, having all the old fiberglass removed, having it foamed up there around the rim joists.
We're going to talk about that when we get
Okay.
down there. But before
Right.
that happened, tell
Sure.
them what you had contacted a person to give you an energy audit prior to that.
Right. Okay.
Talk a little bit about that.
Right.
And how that went.
Okay. And this was just a few months after I moved into the house. And I sort of expected that the house, having been built 20 years after my house in Leavenworth, that it would be more energy efficient. But it wasn't. My sense was that this was about the same kind of, cold, not drafty, but cold, energy inefficient house that we had in Leavenworth. So I had an energy auditor come in and do an energy audit, and he did the pressure test, where they see if the vapor barriers are right. And the house does pretty good on the pressure test. He says well above code on the pressure test. But when he took pictures of the walls, you could see every stud in the exterior walls. Mm-hmm. So, what you had, thermodynamically, because, thermodynamics, the heat moves towards cold, right? And is you had heat moving through the walls on the studs, because if you look at it from sideways, you got your sheetrock in here where the studs are, then you have a stud, then you have your exterior siding, and that just conducts heat out of the house.
Right, directly.
In the winter, or in the summer, heat into the house. And so that increases your heating costs and your cooling costs for most of the months of the year. So, but there's nothing I can do about that now. I thought long and hard about having the house resided and the additional insulation put in, which would be like an inch or two of foam, which the 2021 codes call for.
Right.
But I said, Jan, that's just a lot.
That's a
let's see
lot.
what I can do first.
Yeah.
So I said, let's concentrate on the attic, because most of the heat loss is through the attic. And, let's concentrate on the attic first with the insulation, and then also on the basement, because the concrete down in the basement really conducts heat out of and into the basement. So I said, maybe we can do, some really good insulation work there, and then, get an electric furnace, get, go all electric, and see how the house performs. Now, of course, when you're gambling with your wife's comfort, during the winter, it was sort of like, I'm not going to spare any expense. I'm not going to do this cheap and then find out that I'm, 3 or 4 degrees off. The house is going to need to be comfortable. So when I got contracted with Mission to do the work, I told them, make sure that this thing works. And it worked. Mm-hmm. So last winter was the first winter that we spent in the house, and it wasn't an awful winter.
No, it
was may
not
be the new
super
normal,
cold, yeah.
But it wasn't an awful winter. I remember worse. But that week before Christmas was really cold.
It was brutal.
And it was brutal, and at many times not even getting above 0 during the day, and but the system performed well. So I guess I feel it's been very successful.
Well, and contrary to what I have been told, or what thought might happen is then after you had the blower guy come do the blower door test and you had the energy audit, you called me.
Right.
And I came in and we talked to, and I consulted with, when you told me that you wanted to do a heat pump.
Yeah.
And so I called a heating and air guy that I'd known for a long time and asked him his opinion. And he said he would never put an air-to-air heat exchanger in an unsealed, poorly insulated house. He said that you will not be comfortable.
Yeah.
So that was the message that I got from him.
And that is what most people would say. But heat pumps have gotten a lot better. And in fact, most houses there were more heat pumps sold in the United States last year than there were gas furnaces. So, and they weren't just in California and
Florida,
Florida areas like that, but up in the Midwest, I mean in Quebec, where it's cold. If you've ever been in Quebec in the winter, it's cold.
Yeah.
You can't buy gas furnaces anymore. You have to buy heat pumps. So the air exchange heat pumps really worked well. I can't say that it's all air exchange. So when we go down and look at it, there's some, what would you call it? I guess conventional electric heating on top of it. So when it gets, really cold outside, well below freezing, and the heat pump can't generate enough heat to keep to keep the house comfortable, then the coils kick in. Yeah, and but that's fine. Now I felt that I might have to buy like one of those what do you call it, pellet stoves?
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, pellet stove to put in. Is where the fireplace was, so when it got really cold, I could have some backup heat, from burning a little bit of wood, but never saw the need for it. So the house stayed very comfortable, and I got to say, more comfortable than when I had the gas furnace. When the gas furnace came, people have gas furnaces. They have the thermostats, and they know the house gets cold. And then the gas furnace kicks in, and then it gets warm, and then it goes back and gets cold, and you have this up and down cycling. But with the heat pump that they installed, I never really felt that at all. It just seemed it's very quiet, much quieter, and the rooms were constantly comfortable. So I'm very pleased with it.
To reiterate to people, this is an air-to-air heat pump, not a geothermal heat pump.
No, I looked into
I know you investigated that.
And they were extremely expensive, and because of the way the lot is, to put one in would, they have to bring in a huge truck,
machinery,
to drill it, and it just. There's no place to do it on the property. So no, I didn't go geothermal, I went air to air. But the more I read, the more I was convinced that it could handle it, that the new models could handle it. I got to say, I went to some vendors when I was looking for vendors, and a lot of them wouldn't touch it. They said, no, we don't do that kind of thing. No, we didn't. But Mission says, oh yeah, we can set you up. And Mission, I was pleased with them, but I hear that there's other vendors who are also in that business who will do a great job, who we could recommend. And then, of course, getting Hayes,
So after I was here, and then we got Mike O'Connell with Hayes Insulation involved, and he came and did some magic stuff.
And he was great. He was great, and his whole crew was great. Everybody I worked with was great, and but they were very interested in this project too, because I think I'm one of the first people in the area to see if this is really doable with the current technology. And I thought it was important that, if I'm going to go out and talk the talk, I need to walk the walk. And now I feel very comfortable walking the walk and talking the talk.
All right.
Right, and I don't feel like I need to run out and get a pellet stove, to put in the house.
And you haven't needed a space heater.
No, we never. That's a great point. Is that, in the room we're in now, when I had the gas furnace, I would always have a space heater in here. I was always using space heaters in this room, but I didn't this year. You know, I didn't this year, and
Could be.
and you know, little Casey, you know, you met him out there, and the other grandkids, they loved playing downstairs during the winter when they were here because they got this big space down there, you know, and not a lot of stuff that
they can damage, yeah.
that they can damage. So they love to go down there and play. You know, Casey loves to go play in the storage room downstairs, and those were just really cold before we put in the insulation.
Yeah.
The whole lower floor was, you know, and it is a little cooler. I mean, it is downstairs
yeah.
after all, but we never even used any space heaters down there. So,
Okay.
very successful.
Great. Well, why don't we go have a look at some of these things that you did, and you can talk a little bit more about them there.
Okay, super.
Okay. Well, now we're gonna show you Stephen's energy recovery ventilator, which, because if you do a lot of spray foaming in your house, which then Stephen did, because we went up into his attic and we sucked out all the old fiberglass insulation, and they used what kind of depth did they do in the spray foam?
You know, they did all the rim joists and every place that was open,
right.
where there was a cut. So it's completely sealed,
Right.
the attic.
So they sealed all the penetrations that came up from
Right.
the main floor up into the attic space. When they got all the old insulation out, they wanted to use spray foam and close up all those. So then I told Stephen that, you know, if we did that, there was a chance that we might need an energy recovery ventilator. So he went ahead and asked Mission to go ahead and install one for him. So this is his energy recovery ventilator, that it pulls air from bathrooms and kitchens. Is that where only two places?
It plugs in to the heating and cooling system up here through these ducts, and then it comes out into the room through that duct there, and then these are input and output to get
The air exchange.
from the outside.
Yeah, the air exchange happens.
And then this is where all the miracle happens in here with the motor. And this can be set up so that it runs like 10 minutes every hour, or it can be set up so that it just runs constantly or never at all. And what I do, because the thing is probably too big for the house, but what I do, because this is right below the living room, is whenever we go out for a walk or leave the house, you know, maybe once a week, we leave for an hour. So I just turn the thing on, and it just vents continuously.
For that
and then
hour.
when I come home, we turn it off.
Really?
Which
Okay.
works fine. And the house is very comfortable. When we do that, I turn on the fan for the, you know, above the stove, and also turn on the bathroom fans above the showers, you know, to get more
So they don't
draw around the house.
Do you have actual vents, ERV vents in the kitchen and bathroom or not?
I
or just
don't
have
know what
this
an
one?
ERV vent is.
This
Like
this is the ERV,
No,
but it's a special vent that comes from those rooms.
No, I don't think they're special
So
vents.
so this is it just intakes right here.
Yes.
So that's just an air intake and
Right.
exchanging the air. Okay.
Right,
All right.
exactly.
So this is not a typical ERV, but it was because it was put in after the fact. This is what happened to happen. But when you build a house, the proper installation of an ERV is that you would have vents in kitchens and bathrooms that would, when you have it on, suck the stale air out of the house and eject it and then bring in fresh air.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is, because this was a retrofit, this is the way that was installed.
And this was the only place they could put it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we'll show you the other mechanical room.
Right. They wanted to put it in the other mechanical room, but there wasn't room. I'd like you to pan over here. These are the space heaters, which we never used last winter.
Never needed
for
to
the
use.
first time.
Yeah.
Because the house was much more comfortable. They just sat there all
That's
winter
great.
long.
Okay.
Okay.
And we'll go look at the mechanical room.
We're now in the mechanical room where the heater and the water heater are, but first I'd like to introduce my grandson Casey. And Casey and his other grandsons and all the kids their age are why I did this. You know, I will spare no expense to save the planet for these kids. Okay. So they can enjoy the planet when they're my age.
That's right.
Okay. And so here we have the water heater. I had him put in a all-electric water heater. It's huge, but if we have guests, we might need it. And you see behind the water heater, the foam board that extends the whole, behind that would be concrete. Here is our new heater. We use the existing ducting, too late to change it. And in here we have the interior heat exchanger for the heat pump, which is outside, and then up here someplace, in here someplace, are two like toasters, with just convection, is that right? Convection heaters, like you'd find in a normal electric heating place, heating system, where they don't have access to natural gas.
Yeah.
So what happens is when the heat pump can no longer generate enough heat, when it gets so cold that it can no longer generate enough heat to heat the house, then the electric convection coils kick in.
Electric coils kick in, yeah.
Right. And now we're further into the mechanical room, and here you can see up there, you can see all the foaming that was done around the foam joist. They put a lot of foam up here to give insulation and vapor barrier, I guess, against the house. They also foamed down here the air exchanger outside unit, or the heat exchanger is out here, and you see here the pipe. This is where the natural gas used to come into the house, but you can see that it's sealed off. We no longer use natural gas. I called up Spire, told them to shut off the natural gas, and they said, where would we forward the bill to? And I said, just send it to the same address, the final bill. Yeah, so I no longer use any natural gas in this house. Okay, and this is the electrical panel. You got to have enough juice to come in, and this is a 200 amp
200
panel.
amp panel.
Right, and you can see all the new breakers they put in for the furnace here. This is for the water, the electric water heater, and this is for the car charger. We put a car charger for an EV out in the garage, and we don't have the EV yet. Last year was not a good year to buy an EV, but the next car we get is going to be an EV, and it's going to have its own charger out there.
Is the charger out there yet or not?
No,
just the
because
wiring.
that's specific to the vehicle. So,
Okay. Oh, that's
if you go buy a Tesla, you get the Tesla charger, for
Right.
instance. Right.
Okay. So yeah, you just have to make sure that you've got a big enough electrical panel to start with, or
Right.
else you need to upgrade your electrical panel to accommodate all the going electrical instead of using the gas.
Right,
So,
right. And I've just got one spare.
one
now.
spare left.
I've got
All right.
one spare. Okay, now we're looking up in the attic where a lot of work was done that made this project successful. What the HRES insulation folks did was take out all the fiberglass insulation that had been blown in here. They said it was about R48. And then what they did was they vacuumed it all out, and then they spray foamed around the joists. They spray foamed around all the, where the can lights come down, any kind of hole in the ceiling, and sealed the lower part of the attic completely.
Yeah, all the penetrations where wiring or plumbing would come up through an attic. That's what they tried to get sealed.
Right. And then they came in with cellulose and blew it all in. The ceiling is kind of irregular, and you can see that when you look at the blown cellulose, but they say it's about an R60 up there, on average, and it performed really well. Very pleased with the insulation in the attic and how well it performed during the winter.
Great.
The bad news is that all this work wasn't free. I used two vendors, Mission Heating and Plumbing and HRES Insulation. I didn't do a whole lot of shopping around. And, they charged me, I think, a fair price for what they did. If I had done this 2 years later, not last year, but next year, almost all the expense would have been paid for by the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed in 1922. Or 2022. Yeah, not quite.
1922.
Which is a 10-year program to get houses to electrify. Okay, What it wants to do is electrify households across the nation. And so, for instance, what these allow is for tax credits at the end of the year for electrification that you do, and also state-run point-of-sale discounts or rebates for the things you buy to put in your home.
Like an induction stove.
Like an induction stove. So if you get an induction stove, now the example I have is from New York. Missouri and Kansas are developing their own programs, but they ought to be fairly similar because they're given the same amount of money by the federal government to run the programs. So, for instance, if you put in an induction stove, you get an $840 upfront discount.
Rebate
on your purchase.
Yeah.
If you put in an electric heat pump, and again, this is in New York, you get an $8,000 upfront rebate on your air exchange heat pump plus a $2,000 tax credit. If you put in rooftop solar, you get a 30% tax credit up to $5,700. For basic weatherization, $1,600 upfront rebate and a $1,200 tax credit.
And I think that would, your insulation and things that you did would qualify for that weatherization things.
Exactly.
Right?
So
Yeah.
they would have paid a lot of the insulation costs. For an electric vehicle, you can get $7,500 tax credit for a new electrical vehicle. For electrical panel, and we talked about the electrical panel, you can get a $4,000 upfront discount and a $600 tax credit. So that's just some of the stuff. For a heat pump water heater, you can get a $1,750 upfront discount and a $2,000 tax credit. So there's a lot of money that's being thrown at homeowners like you to take this 10-year window of opportunity and electrify your house. The government will pay, maybe not every dollar of it, but most of the cost of doing it will be paid for by the federal government and by your states through their point of sale discount programs. So that is tremendous news, and I hope all of you take advantage of it.
So thank you very much for attending our Zoom session. And now we're going to we'll be going and letting Stephen answer your questions that you might have. So thanks very much.
So that was excellent. You got your mic off or on? Okay, there we go. I believe Mr. Melton and Sean are both on. Do you guys want to have some questions thrown your way? There wasn't any in chat that I saw.
I just want to start out by saying I thought that the format was very good, and it's something that we can do again and be successful with. So thanks for putting all this together. Really good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. Well, Sean, do you have any final thoughts then, since we're winding up here? Comes to me.
I
Well,
think so.
all right. I hope people take advantage of the tax credits and rebates, and I hope it all comes to pass, because we're way behind the curve, as most people who are going to watch this will be. We know. So I guess with that being said, if I don't see or hear anybody saying anything else,
I have another question.
Sure.
You did a lot of air work, especially in the attic. Was there done a blower door test after all that work was done to determine, well, here's how we reduce the air infiltration?
Yes, they did do another blower door test. It was actually the Hayes Insulation folks that did it, and it performed better than the first one did. That was done before all this work was done. So it made a significant difference. It wasn't perfect, but it never is. And
I think
to be perfect.
I remember that he looked at your figures from your first blower door test And he said, and then given his figures, he thinks it improved it probably by about 50%.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
think
Is that
that's
what he
what he
said?
said.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So,
well,
I mean,
that's
you know,
significant.
It's significant. It's not anything to
Right.
sneeze at. Yeah.
I haven't noticed any draftiness in the house, and you know, I think a lot of that. Well, you know, some of it comes in from the attic. You know, if they don't foam the rim joists there, but I think also in the basement there was draft coming in under the under the framing, between the
Yeah.
framing and the concrete.
Yeah.
And so, you know, by foaming those and sealing them over with the foam board and the tape, that certainly helped.
So,
No doubt
yeah,
about it. It's much warmer down there.
right where Stephen's office is right below that is where they did a lot of that work. It's in the bigger storage room that's down there. But
Right.
that's where they put the insulation board on all the concrete walls that were, you know, to the dirt, the basement. Those walls weren't, they had the foam put on those and they taped that. And then they also did the rim joist right above that. So his office, he'd had a space heater in it. And after they did this, I think it felt much more comfortable in his office
Oh, it
because
did.
of those two things.
Yeah. Now, I was just looking at a building that's being built here in Parkville and talked to the general contractor, and it's being built to the 2021 IECC codes.
It
And
is?
they were putting in the foam or outside the basement, you know,
Really?
and they did
Very
the
good.
R40 in the attic, and they're going to put 2 inches of foam board around the, you know, outside the studs on the walls. You know, it isn't as if what's being done is exotic and undoable.
Right.
And this was commercial construction. And of course, we got no real pushback from the commercial construction people on the energy efficiency codes of 2021 IECC. The only pushback was from the home builders who said, who are, want to build the cheapest house that they can build and then offload the consequences on the buyer, you know.
Right.
So,
What was the builder of this commercial building? And
you
where
know,
was it?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name, but it's
Where is it?
It's the
Go
right
ahead.
behind the library where we met.
Oh, okay. Oh, I know which
They're
one.
putting
it
an
is.
addition on a
Yeah.
veterinary clinic.
Veterinary, the Taylor veterinary thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. I'll go check.
We have a couple questions coming in. One of
Okay.
them is when you looked at going all electric, did you look into getting a heat pump water heater? Did you consider it? And then why did you not get it, basically?
That's a great question. And I asked myself that. I had never heard of a heat pump water heater before. You know, I didn't even know they existed. And nobody ever told me they existed. And then after I put the thing in, you know, and then I start to hear about heat pump water heaters. So, you know, I guess one
I was remiss in
problem
not
is you
telling
just
them
don't know
about
what
that.
you don't know. If somebody had said, well, you can do this, you know, then I probably would have gone that way. But
Yeah. I probably just didn't mention it to you when I was there. I didn't think to mention it to you before you had your work done. Yeah.
and then of course, you know, they're getting better. You know, the ones that were put in a few years ago were just, because it is a fairly new technology, just, you know, the new ones are really much, much better than the old ones. So, but water heating is not a huge issue, you know, in terms of draw on electricity. It isn't, you know, I'm not about to tear out my new electric water heater to put in a
Heat pump one. Yeah.
Okay, we got, the question reads like this: why was a resistive only model selected instead cost? I'm thinking the question basically is, what did you look at getting a resistive only furnace and not a heat pump, and what was the cost of it? Or did you even have a comparison done? Had you put in the heat, well, you wouldn't have done the heat pump without the.
You mean just a
well,
regular electric furnace versus a heat pump?
The nice thing about the heat pump is it's air conditioning as well. So
Right.
it's one unit that works both in summer and winter. And so that saves a lot of money. And then it saves money using a heat pump a heat pump is more efficient at heating the house. It just,
The coils only.
in most
yeah,
temperature ranges, but when it gets real cold, you do need that electric convection,
right.
coils in there. I just thought it was a good package. I thought, we'll save the money using the heat pump as much as we can, in the summer and the winter. And then if I need some additional heat, I've got the coils to back up.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
we got more questions. And one of them here, which I'm going to have to talk to offline, Al Frisbee wants to know something about why did he not get a utility or a discount, and that has something to do with the system he put in. So I did.
I did get a discount. I got a check from Evergy for $750.
Okay.
For the
Well,
heat pump?
let me read the question in its entirety again.
Okay.
Just put in a 240 volt, 50 amp line to charge my VW ID4, which is a new EV. I mean, brand new. They're just not coming out, or just now available here. Did that just here? So basically, he just did it. I did not get a discount with the company. Can I go back and get a discount now? I spent $1,014 for the line. No, I don't think you can. I
You
guess
don't think you can?
it's not retroactive.
Well, the upfront discounts are part of the state program, and the state doesn't have the program in place yet. So you gotta wait for the state to get their program in place, and then the discounts will come. You can go back and ask them, and they might do something, I don't know, but
Especially if they're dated this year.
Yeah.
The invoices are dated this year.
there might be something that you can do once.
Yeah,
they
to
start having
qualify
this.
for the tax credits, the federal tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act, you have to have the thing purchased or installed beginning January 1st, 2023.
Right, the tax
It
credits
is
are in place
retroactive.
now.
And the state point of sale rebates will not be active until next year. So, the way the legislation is written is the states, are notified, this is how much money you're going to get. And then they got to, come up with their program for what they're going to do with the money. But the money will not be available for the state programs until next year. So, that's kind of a good news, bad news thing. We wish it were available this year, but the states have to figure out what they're going to do. And, you saw from the, New York is way ahead. There are some states who are really grabbing onto this thing as an opportunity. I don't know what they're doing in Kansas and Missouri, to tell you the truth.
They're dragging their
Daniel
heels.
keeps
What they're doing.
raising his hand. We should let Daniel
Yeah,
ask.
I was going to say Daniel's been waiting a while to talk or ask a question.
Yeah, let's see. I keep running into these guys. They're solar companies, and they say, well, you can get solar and the government will pay for it. But they want to know how much the electric bill is. They want to know that it's at least $90 a month. And I haven't really followed up on them, but, is what they're saying accurate or what? I mean, I'm curious.
I'll let somebody else answer that. I don't have solar.
I actually see those ads if you're on Facebook or something. They pop up saying, "Hey, Missouri, you can get solar basically for free." I have not followed up with them, but I don't. There's no program that I am aware of in Missouri that pays for a solar system.
No, it's just the 30% federal tax credits that you can get. It's 30% of it.
Right. No, but the wording of the ad is basically you get one. I think what they're getting at, it's what they tend to do is that they're saying they'll save you enough that you're going to pay the same, and you get. They're it's not a con, but it's a little stretch to say that your system will be free. You get your tax credit, and then if the system offsets more than what your bill was, yeah, it's technically free. But
That's why they want
maybe-
your bill to be over $90 so that they know that they're saving you enough money that even you'll keep paying the same amount you've been paying, but you're paying for the solar system. Then it's not costing you anything extra.
right, they got to have a
They're going
minimum.
to factor in that 30% discount tax credit into that equation as well. And they probably, I would be careful that you retain the renewable energy credits for that, the RECs, the renewable energy certificates, because some solar companies are doing this and then keeping the renewable energy certificates, and then they can sell those and make a ton of money off of them.
Yeah, carbon credits are coming too.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you keep those so that you can make the money off of them and not them.
Right, right. And one other thing, they may also keep your tax credit. That's how they give you the system for free. I don't know. It seems suspicious. All right, we had another thing. How long a warranty on the heat pump and how much did it cost? I think he means, this is from Michael Miller, and I think he's talking about the one in your house. Where
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I don't know specifically. It comes with a warranty that's, I believe it's a 10-year warranty. You know, how much I paid for the warranty, you know, it just came with the system, I guess was built into the price of the system. So, you know, it wasn't like buying a car where, you know, they take you back into the little room and sell you, you know, a different warranty based on how much you want to pay.
Now, how much was the system approximately for the heat pump?
They build all of it together, and it was like $30,000 for the electrical work, for all the work they did. They just gave me one lump sum.
They did the electrical work too?
Yeah, they did. Well, CMOs did it, but they're like one company. So Mission and CMOs are together.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, they've merged together.
So that probably included your ERV as well. Your heat
Yeah, that
pump,
was the
your
ERV, all that stuff.
the hot water tank,
The
everything
hot
together.
water tank, the
okay.
interior unit, the exterior unit. You know.
So that was a lot. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. You know, and
Yeah.
you know, like I said, I wasn't, you know, I wasn't going to gamble here with my wife's comfort. You know, the most expensive thing you can do is, you know, have your wife divorce you because you ruined her.
Because she's cold.
Yeah, so, you know, maybe I'm just a coward, but I just decided that I was going to, you know, that I was going to get a reputable firm who, you know, knew how to do it. And, you know, I guess what they gave me is a fair price. I wasn't, you know, and maybe I could have gotten it cheaper, but what do I know? You know, I'm just, you know, what do I know? And, you know, I'm not in this business and I'm only going to do it once. And
if they did it to your approval, then that's when, you know, they didn't leave you with a big mess or something.
Exactly. So, you know, and that's worth something. So, you know, it's, I'm sure that as these things become more prevalent, you know, and more vendors start to carry these items and do this kind of work, that there'll be some kind of price competition, you know, and
sure.
and people will have more information and be able to do it, you know, maybe at more reasonable cost. But I didn't feel I was in that situation. You know, I was sort of, you know, I was desperate, you know, to get the thing done right, and I was much more sensitive to getting it done right than
The cost,
the cost, you know.
Did they give you any more specifications about the SEER rating of the heat pump or the, was it a dual stage?
I think,
motor.
it is, you know.
You're not
You
sure?
know, I guess I'm not an expert on this stuff, you know. when I was a kid and I had my old like 1955 Chevy pickup truck, you know, where you could like open up the hood and look down and see the ground underneath the engine, you know. And you know, they were real simple and I felt like I could work on them, you know, and I could be like an expert on them. But, you know, that was then. Now I rely on other people and their expertise. These things are so complicated, you know, and so much engineering and science in them that I will never understand, you know, and I find myself just throwing myself at the mercy of experts, you know.
I guess we should have looked at your stuff because that would have been interesting to see how high efficiency it was. Like maybe you've got like my heat pump I installed 17 years ago. It was a SEER 16 at the time.
Yeah.
I think when I go to get the new one, when I get a new one here soon, or you know, when I need it, it's going to be a higher SEER rating. I'm going to get a better one.
Yeah.
So, better efficiency.
And that's, you know, it's sort of like with the iPhone, you know, you buy the iPhone 1, and every few years you go down and get the next iPhone, and it's a lot better than the one before. And, every time you go buy a car, it's going to be better than the one you got before. I'm sure that, in the lifetime of this house, with the frame and foundation, it should last 150 years. I'm sure that every time that a new heating and cooling system is put in, it's going to be better than the one before. But
We hope, we hope.
but you can't really wait for that.
No.
You can't wait for that. You've got to buy what's on the market at the time that you need it. And I just threw myself at their mercy and said, basically, I trust you, and if you screw me over, I'm gonna come after you.
You're gonna hear from me. Oh, I should have looked at your paperwork a little bit better. We would have known.
And like I said, everybody I worked with did a wonderful job. And in fact, I think that they probably gave me a little bit of discount on what I did, because they were very, very interested in this project as well. They were very interested.
Okay, I want to throw out a quick thought for everybody, since we're talking about heat pumps and the pros and cons and all that. And this will date me, but probably 20 plus years ago, they invented what's called the Copeland compliant scroll compressor. I'm pretty sure everybody uses it now. And the thing is when they invented it, it's based on a conch shell concept where it just rotates. It doesn't spin. And theoretically, it can last forever, or, for a very long time. There's no friction either. Or basically, I mean, there is some. But the problem is the warranties on heat pumps and most anything is 10 years or so, because the motors give out. If you could have a really good motor, your heat pump could theoretically last 50 years probably, or something. I don't know what the upside is, but it could last longer than 10, because it's not the air conditioner components itself that go bad. It's the motors wear out. So I think we'll button this up. It was wonderful. Thank you for the very good information, Mr. Melton. And
I want to thank everybody for their help in doing this. Shauna, she really was the spine,
To push you to do
she
this.
convinced me that I should be her experiment
oh, sure.
That's right.
on getting this done. It came out great. It just came out great. I couldn't be more pleased, and thank you all for listening to me tonight.
I think your talk tonight will help with your mission of getting people to understand more about what they can do about the climate. And
That's right.
I hope so.
Our part.
I hope so.
all right, well, that's it for this round then. I will be shutting her down. Thanks to everybody for being here. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Craig. Good to see everybody. Bye-bye.